Was that Alien 3?
Alien 1, I saw it
Alien.
because back then theaters had one movie, so it was like, let's all go to the movies. We'll just go to whatever's there. And I got to see both Star Wars and Alien in theaters in 77, 78, 79.
For
That's
a
cool.
nickel.
Welcome to the Cable Club. We're a retro video gaming podcast where two guys legally dogfight and one guy went to town to pick up some more power converters. This is episode number 47, and this is our 17th League episode. We're your hosts. I'm Steve,
I'm Don.
and we're here with Chris. Say hi,
Hello,
Chris.
everybody.
Today, we're talking about Star Wars X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter. So get ready to upload data from us to you. But first, let's set the mood. In a galaxy not very far away and not so long ago, the music is blaring and the on-screen magic is filling your young eyes. Cinema magic at the movie theater. You've got your large Coke, salty popcorn, and Sour Patch Kids. Hyped up on sugar, you're watching the fate of a distant galaxy unfold in an epic confrontation of good versus evil. Lightsabers clash, force powers exchange, and political ideologies vie for power in what feels like the conflict to end all conflicts. The thing that you may have enjoyed the most, though, was the spaceships, flying around, maneuvering masterfully, and shooting lasers all over the place. Your young mind has been captivated through this experience so much that Star Wars was now a household topic. It was the quintessential sci-fi experience of all time. What better way to experience the world that you love so much than to fly your very own spaceship? Today, we're talking about Star Wars X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter.
I have a fact check for you. The Star Wars Return of the Jedi aired in theaters 1983. Sour Patch Kids released in 1984. You would have been eating those Mike and Ike's, son.
Actually, they remastered and re-released them all in the 90s because I went to see them in the theater. So, fact check that.
Because you two are too young to have seen it theatrically at original release.
That is true.
Definitely. Actually, I think I did see one of them in theaters too when I was young.
Well, yeah, but the 20th anniversary releases. When they added that extra bonus footage.
I think even you old man are a little bit too young to have seen the original release of Star Wars in theaters, right?
I saw it at the Coventry Cinemas in Rhode Island, a one cinema theater, and that was one of my first movies ever seen. That and my parents scared the crap out of me with Alien in the theater. I ran out of that movie. I do not know why they took me to that movie.
A lot of people did, actually. I was watching some YouTube video on it. A lot of people brought their kids to see Alien.
I ran to the restroom at one point. The chess scene was too much for me.
I caught a glimpse of it on TV while sneaking downstairs to watch a TV with my parents without them knowing, and it like scared me for 2 weeks straight. I could barely sleep.
Yes.
Was that Alien 3?
Alien 1, I saw it
Alien.
because back then theaters had one movie, so it was like, let's all go to the movies. We'll just go to whatever's there. And I got to see both Star Wars and Alien in theaters in 77, 78, 79.
For a
cool.
nickel.
Actually, A New Hope was my third movie theater experience. My first was The Lion King, and the second was Aladdin, but the third movie that I went to see was A New Hope, and I've been a Star Wars fan since. I'm not like real huge, like I don't know everything, but I do know a fair amount, and it definitely captivated me as a kid. I've seen them all in theaters now.
I got roped in as a kid. I had to wait for toys for Christmas because Star Wars was the first movie that really started the toy franchise. But unlike nowadays, where they release the things before the movie comes out, Star Wars had stuff coming in the next 6 months later with the first Christmas post the movie. And you're like, oh my God, action figures. Oh my God,
It,
play sets. Oh my God, X Wings and TIE Fighters and Millennium Falcons. It was absolutely incredible, but you had to wait 6 whole months. Burger King released little mini toys and the glasses, and it was just a collector's nightmare for the rest of time. Star Wars was the first one that started all of the action figure craze of that generation.
yeah, our generation was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They
Oh,
were huge
Transformers.
action figure stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess Transformers would have been like maybe a few years prior to us, but they were still Transformers when I was a kid. But yeah, it definitely was a toy, a toy commercial for sure.
The only Star Wars toy that I really remember is I had this Death Star that was probably about the size, a little smaller than a basketball, and it would open up,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be this like at the bottom you had like Tatooine, and then you had parts of Jabba the Hutt's area, and the cantina, and all the way at the top was like inside the Death Star, where Luke fights Darth Vader, and it was like all these things. You had little pieces that moved around. It was pretty cool.
I had a Star Wars star chart that also had like a battery powered like speaker, and you had to use the chart and read blurbs to answer trivia questions. It was like this whole thing. I don't know, had like a bank of like 100 trivia questions
It
from
is
the movie
so
and stuff.
funny.
If you're watching at home, people can see I still have some of my original action figures, including my Millennium Falcon up there, a couple of the macro figures I just couldn't part with, and a couple of vessels. So, yeah, I still have some of my ancient stuff, but I've unloaded some of it for pawning purposes over the years. Just didn't want to have that many crates of things in my house. But yes, I had the earlier Death Star, but it was 3 tier and about 3 feet tall with a trash compactor with little foam nuggets and this little lizard that was the size of Han Solo, even though the movie made it sound like it was a dinosaur.
You mean the Rancor? Is that
No, there
No,
was something in the trash compactor. It never got a name. The Rancor's Return of the Jedi, just to show you my nerddom.
I knew that.
Oh,
But
I should have known
the
that.
only thing you really saw was one tentacle and one eyeball pop out of the ooze, and then it just disappeared when they were going to start crushing because it could slither out into another trash compactor.
Vermin.
Well,
Anywho,
the sanitation workers of the Death Star weren't exactly Union employees.
No,
certainly not. Pretty sure that the Empire was anti-union.
Very anti-union.
Yeah. So before we keep going, because Chris is about the biggest Star Wars fan that I know, I have a question of the week for you boys. And I don't know, this might be a little bit out of Chris's depth, but very simply, what is your favorite flight simulator or shmup shoot 'em up video game?
guests first.
Guess first. Well, this one has a nostalgia purpose for me, but shoot 'em ups, you count shoot 'em ups as non-flying?
Yeah, they can be. Absolutely.
Then I still like Fallout 4, current modern times. I love just walking the wasteland with my spray and pray. Go find some horde of ghouls or some super mutants and just go blasting away. That is never disappointing. You know exactly where to go when you want to blow things up. Steve?
I'm
Um,
gonna let it slide. I'm gonna let it slide.
it's fine. So I'd have to say I don't have like one favorite, but I will replay any of the Raiden games. They were released on a couple systems, but it's also an arcade cabinet. I think it was Raiden Fighters was the one that we played a lot on. It had the Judge Spear.
Yeah.
I love Raiden. And for anybody that doesn't know, it's a Galaga, but you can move not just the x-axis but the y-axis, and you get a bunch of different powered up guns, and you're basically fighter jets, and you can bomb things, and shoot lasers, and there's like tons of cool different weapons. I love Raiden.
And it's hard. I think it barely falls into the category of what they call bullet hells.
Yeah, not quite, but yeah, it's
Yeah, like
close.
almost. It's a very hard shmup. I mean,
It's not
shmups
like
are hard
Toho.
anyway, but yeah. Um, so I think my favorite shoot 'em up game, other than Raiden, actually, is I don't know if you remember, Steve, but back in high school we used to play this one two-player Dragon Spirit for the
Yeah,
NES.
NES.
It was
Yeah,
like the medieval sort of like you play as a knight flying on a dragon and you throw
yeah,
like
yeah. I
lances and stuff
remember.
at oncoming enemies. Yeah, that one was pretty neat. I'm not a huge player of the genre.
I would also throw the arcade version of Gauntlet, where you could not do that game solo, but if you had 3 or 4 people, that game was an absolute terror with you stealing each other's apples because your the act of the was it the dwarf is about to die, and you get all those kinds of things. But playing in tandem, that was one of the early arcade good tabletop games where that is a shoot 'em up game.
We're using shoot 'em up very loosely in this conversation. Anyway, all right, so those are our answers, but how about the folks over in the Discord? Legend of Kazooin says, I haven't played a ton, but Task Force Harrier EX for the Sega Genesis has a special place in my nostalgic memory. Is that the one that's the helicopter? Is anybody know what I'm talking about?
I know Space Harrier, but I don't know about that one.
Space Harrier, you play as like the kid that flies, and it's like 3D, and you're like
Yeah.
going forward. Gives me something about that game gives me terrible motion sickness, even though I can play 3D games and not worry about it. That one in particular just messes me up. Maybe it was Desert Strike that is the helicopter one that I'm thinking of. JMO says Star Fox 64 is the academically correct answer, so I'll go ahead with Shadow Squadron on the 32X. Best space shooter you've never heard of. He's right. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, never heard of it.
Lobaka says, for something I feel fits the bill as a flight sim, I'm going to go with Simcopter. I really dug that. You see, this week was really, I think, my first adult experience with a flight sim, and I didn't understand how cool this was. Like, you know, something like Simcopter just sounds so boring on paper. But like, if you were to say, "Hey Don, do you want to learn how to fly a helicopter this afternoon?" I'd be like, "Hell yeah, that sounds awesome." But that's kind of what these games are. They're like as close as you can come to flying the actual thing, and they're designed for realism, which I think is
So
really cool.
I know that a lot of first person shooter games are the war based ones are developed to make our soldiers more ready and experienced in combat. So they'll use them for training exercises not on the field. I'm sure that certain flight sims may have been made to help people initially understand flying. So helicopter sim might be something that was developed with a government, you know, paycheck involved. Who knows?
Perhaps just developed by a bunch of nerds as a video game, hoping the government would pay them for their work
Could be.
back in the day. But I mean, no. Now, I mean, if you talk to anyone in the Air Force, they'll tell you simulators are an enormous part of their training and ongoing maintenance of their training, apparently. So, and now you see it with like like surgeons now. They have simulators for that. It's just really neat how kind of I'm hesitant to call them a video game, but it kind of
Yeah,
is, right?
well, it's not really a game.
Well, you can lose with no stakes. I feel
No,
like
but a
that's a
lot of
game.
pilots do so many hours in The Sims, and it is a glorified video game because there's multiple joysticks with multiple switches. Create my high school. People don't know I'm a teacher, and our high school had a whole flight sim, and the kids were actually getting hours credited to do flight training. So it does feel like sometimes they have VR goggles to some degree now, but originally it was just like multi screens in front of you. So yeah, it has the same technological benefits of a full on flight simulator slash video game.
Yeah, I was just poking fun at it not really being like game like it's not like you don't have points or you know what I mean.
I can
No,
hear the Gran Turismo fans now. They're eating us alive. And with that, are you guys ready to get into the game?
more than ready.
Ready.
All right, so this is the part of the show where we talk to our guest about the game that they brought to the league. So, Chris, tell us
Yes.
why. Tell us a little bit about X-Wing versus TIE Fighter and why you brought it to the league.
Sure. I've been a video game fan all of my life. I was birthed on the Atari. I am that old where that was the new thing.
Which
And
Atari? Which Atari?
3600, the original Atari. In fact, my dad liked tech, so he would buy some of the newest tech. So like we had a VCR right when it came out, but he actually got the Pong system. I can't remember what the game system was, but it was just Atari had a Pong device. It was one swivel and one button, and you could choose your bumpers on this ancient video game where it was just basically Pong going back and forth with different blockers, different speeds, different difficulties. But it was like a 20 versions of Pong video game. So when Atari came out, my brothers were in their teenage years. I'm still 6, 7 when Atari comes out. So we're buying cartridges, the new games of the era. So I grew up on Atari. Neighborhood kids had ColecoVision. We eventually morphed into an Intellivision. So I was birthed in the home video game console and spent way too many dollars at the Aladdin's Castle down at the mall. We had 2 different Aladdin's Castles in Rhode Island. So it was certainly a part of my childhood, which probably deterred my ability to get girlfriends back in the day. But when I get through high school, I go to college, and this game comes out. My roommate has a nice PC. I still have something that basically is just to do essays, and that's all it's for. And he's got a nice desktop computer, and he shows me Ultima Part 7, and he shows me X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. So this game was an absolute evolution in home console systems. Um, I know the two of you know about the original Star Wars arcade game with the black screen, green lines, and that's a nice flight game, and that got a lot of tokens. And it's a great game. I will still play it if I go to a retro arcade. It still is a banging video game. And I thought about suggesting that one, but it's a little too simple in the terms that it's only got its 3 acts with levels of difficulty, and it's rooted to make you lose in 20 minutes. You can get through the arcade version in no more than 20 minutes. You're eliminated. But this game, it's a home console. You guys, I don't think you have a flight simulator in the league yet. And I thought it was worthy of consideration because it's got so many levels of difficulty. There's 3 modes to it: easy, medium, and hard. You get the flexibility of being what crafts you want. You earn awards. The point system is very sophisticated. We'll get to gameplay later, but the game system is designed to give you points for your speed, your efficiency, your staying longer and taking on harder and harder and harder tasks. Like you'll first defeat a shuttle, and then they'll bring in a Corvette, and then they'll bring in a frigate. They upgrade the level of difficulty. So if you want to hang on longer to get bonus points, go for it. You got to be good. And you build your rank. You actually are looking to get promotions. You get little military stripes on it. It'll keep a tally of all of your stats, and you can run a mission multiple times. The game has, it's not AI officially, but it has random generators. Ships are not coming out the same way. The level of difficulty, the flight is unique in every single mission. So it was never boring. We could keep playing. And this was one of the first games I felt like the keyboard, and Don and I were playing a little this week. The sophistication of game control at 1993 levels is off of the chart. My roommate and I would play together as our 2 units. So he would fly and I would modulate the shields or readjust the lasers or retarget. So it was a co op.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're R2.
Like a co-pilot thing.
Yeah, because we weren't that good at understanding the keyboard functions. This is one of the first games that had so many different levels of commands. And Don and I were scrolling through the menus this week, and there's even controls that I don't even think I used in 1993.
Yeah, no exaggeration. I thought this was going to be a simple remapping to the controller, and you just scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. There are so many commands, and they're so granular. There's target the next ship, but that could mean your ally or enemy. So there's target next enemy, target previous enemy, target next ally, target previous ally. And there's shields to lasers, lasers to shields. Toggle your shield and laser recharge rates, which in turn affects your speed. Or you can switch them and put them all into thrusters, and your shield and lasers gradually deteriorate. But now you're cooking. And in fact, I think you're going so fast, my shield completely depleted, my
Yeah,
craft started to fall apart. I was just taking damage from going at top speed. I could do it for a while, but I was seeing the health of my ship go down, and the radar thing just broke, and I couldn't see.
because TIE fighters are much faster. I think you were the rebels at that point. You were getting peppered when your shields were down, and then you can take on damage and still have a couple more seconds. And your ship will finally say, "No, I can't hold it together," and that's when you blow up. But there's a jump button. You could jump to another one in your squadron, so you go back to a ship that maybe has missiles or is at least fully functional. So you go in with a squadron, and people don't even think about that part of the game. You can switch from ship to ship, launch all the missiles of all of your wingmen to try to get your objectives that faster, or go solo and see if you can handle it. Some of the missions, actually, you can go find a convoy assistant to reload your missiles. So there was so much to this game. It is not for the faint of heart who just like shoot 'em up games. There is commitment, there is dedication and skill. And for those of us who don't like many things on the screen, this one tests your limits.
They don't spoon feed you everything. Like
Nope.
your HUD in the ship is not telling you everything. You kind of have to know your craft a little bit. You can also tell the other ships what to do. Like you can tell your
Yeah.
wingman to form up on you and cover you essentially, or you can tell them to disperse, or you can tell them to target one thing, right? Or you can switch ships and right? So it gets really
Yeah.
sophisticated.
It's pretty
So
nice for
like you guys have StarCraft in the league, and that game has very successful F functions where you can create your little mini posses to go left, go right, have your aerial attack be one command. This game has all of that way earlier than most of your PC games do. So I think it's generating ideas for future games down the road. So, like, I put this in the legacy category, even if not a lot of people have played it. It's worthy of mention. I know former guest Hux very well, and he's pushing for his game. I don't care where you guys put this game in the league. I just think it deserves its day in the sun. And if people go play it and they like flight sims, yeah, it's very much a flight sim. There is no secondary feature. You are always in a Z-95 Headhunter, Luke's original ship. If you listen to the audio broadcast of Star Wars, it's got the X-wing, it's got the Y-wing, it's got the A-wing. Future versions, boot ups allowed you to fly other ships, but those are the four basic Rebellion crafts you get to fly. And in 1993, without the next sequel, this kind of level of detail in the Star Wars universe, it's got the John Williams score in it. It's authentic when you start the campaigns. It does the little scroll. It's setting you up to this is what you'll be. You're out in the outer rim. It's got all the funness for those of us who grew up with Star Wars and don't have any new content since 1983. This game hits all the right buttons of the geek, the teenager who's now in his 20s. Oh, French kiss on this game.
See, I feel like episodes 4, 5, and 6, the movies, although lightsaber battles were a thing, I think those movies, those parts of the story put a lot bigger emphasis on the flight, like the actual battles, than episodes 1, 2, and 3. And I'd say even a lot of the later Star Wars content puts a lot of emphasis on one-on-one battle. But the episodes 4, 5, and 6 were really like the big culmination between the rebellion and the empire, and there were lots of large scale battles that took place in space. And I think that, you know,
And it's all models. It's not any kind of CGI in any way.
yeah, and I don't look at Star Wars and inherently think of space battles, because I grew up in the era where lightsaber battles were really becoming the defining feature of Star Wars as a franchise.
And some of the video games later on in the early 2000s were very lightsaber centric.
Yeah, well, it has to do with the setting. So in the first, in 4, 5, and 6, there's only one Jedi. how many lightsaber battles can that one Jedi possibly have when there's only two bad guys and they're at the top of the castle keep that he never gets to see? So he excels at flying a ship because he has the Force and he has an inhuman reflexes because of it. So they put him in the ship and he does the thing and he blows up the Death Star. The first episode, 1, 2, and 3, there are so many Jedi, but if you think about it, it almost more focuses on the dark side of the Force because the enemies are constantly coming at the good guys in those three movies. So the lightsaber battles make sense that it's more centric to the story because the bad guys are attacking the good guys, whereas the good guy in 4, 5, and 6 is trying to get to the bad guys most of the time.
Do you guys have any idea how many Star Wars video games there are?
I want to guess like 100.
Yeah, I'd go north of 50, but I think it's just a little under 100, but I could be totally off. Because with all the platforms, I could be completely gone. I'll go Bob Barker rules and I'll say 51.
Are we counting the Lego Star Wars games or not?
They're Star Wars games.
So, depending on the source, there are indeed over 100 Star Wars video games, which I find to be insane. Most of the ones that I have exposure to, which is a healthy amount. I'm thinking like the Super Nintendo trilogy, maybe not so much the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES games. Those aren't too great, but like there's an N64 one. There's like
There's multiple N64 ones.
yeah, there's
There's
Knights.
Empire Shadow, there's Pod Racer, and there's one other one. There's at least 3 on the 64.
Yeah, I'm struggling to think of it or know which one I played, but and I'm thinking Knights of the Old Republic,
That's on
right?
the PC.
There's tons of flying type Star Wars games, and
Starfighter.
yeah,
Rogue Squadron.
unlike so many licensed games, I feel like the Star Wars fan base has just been eaten good in terms of video games. Like they get treated real nice.
Battlefront 1, 2, and 3.
Delightful games.
Isn't there one of the Battlefront games that's like so microtransaction-y though that
The third one.
okay.
Yeah,
It
I
was in
skipped
the
that
peak
one
era of
entirely
that.
once I learned it was that. I am not into, hey, why don't you buy this to level up? It's like Candy Crush.
Buy
Did,
buy my $70 game to then buy more stuff in it.
did you guys play Star Wars The Phantom Menace on the PlayStation? That game was hard as a kid.
Yeah, I skipped over that, and I spent some tokens in that Pod Racer game because once that hit the arcades, that was a pretty awesome sit-down game.
And the arcade one where it's just the joystick, but you have not only the flying levels, but you also use the joystick to lightsaber battle against Darth
Yes,
Vader. That one was really cool.
that one was fun to master. I totally went to the end of that game too.
And you know, all the like these games have all kind of been around trying to make you feel like you are in the world of Star Wars, which is obviously so rich, right? Or so different from our own, with things like lightsaber battles and flying in space. But the thing that struck me almost immediately about this game was that I knew flight sims were a thing. This wasn't the first time I had played real hard flight sim. I had some on like my old family computer, but they were flying military jets, which
Yep.
is, you know, which is hard, which is cool. I don't want to take away from that, but the space battles have such a different orientation because actually Steve and I were talking before we started this episode about being able to fly upside down, but that's all relative in space. And like I played one level where I was flying with a convoy and the Star Destroyer entered, from my perspective, vertically. Like it was pointed up like the peak of a mountain, up in quotes, right? But that's such a unique thing, I think, about flight sims for the time, is
Yeah,
that the way you think about up and down are irrelevant.
I was in my apartment, college apartment. There was a function where you could hold one trigger because the joystick, I think, had 3 buttons back then. One button, you got the Z axis, and you could rotate to spin to like reorient yourself. And that I thought that was revolutionary in gameplay back then, where it's like, yes, I don't want the Star Destroyer to be upside down, so I'm going to change my perspective. Games didn't really ever have. You were flying on Earth most of the time or some space planet, but it was still gravity. so you flew like a normal thing, or it didn't let you. Like I played Sega Afterburner, which was like a Top Gun knockoff, where all you could do was bank. There was a barrel roll you spun upside down, but then you reoriented. So just the fact that you could mess with the Z axis was spectacularly well done in this game, where you could fly in all things. Some of the melees do asteroids, so you can hug asteroids and just fly right over an asteroid to get your TIE fighter away from you.
Well, I don't know if you guys tried this too, but whenever I was coming up on an enemy ship and we were shooting at each other straight, I made a point to tilt my x-axis sideways so I'd be a narrower target. So I'd
Yep.
be harder to hit, and I'd be shooting sideways at them. I'm making all these hand gestures on this podcast, but
And it's such a little nuance. The video game itself, this game has orientation in the pop-up view. So while you targeting, if you know you're coming up against it, it gives you the true orientation. So you know, Don, if it's on its Z-axis, you know how it's twisted, so you can orient it. Or if it's behind you, you can see if it's shooting. Like they even shoot the little lasers. Like, yeah, it's firing right now, so you know it's coming up on you hot. This game gave you that kind of orientation. So, oh, is it a side glance? Do I want to fly from behind it? Am I gaining on it?
well,
Drop my shields and speed up.
and then there's like mastering the HUD, right?
Yes.
So you have these two radars, one up on the right and one up on the left. And I don't think if you hadn't been there sitting with me, Chris, it would have taken me forever to understand this. But the one on the right is like your rear
Reverse.
view mirror.
Yep, you're backwards.
And if something is in that, it's behind you or on your tail. So you want to like rotate or flip or roll or whatever it is. You want to get that thing in front of you.
And did you notice the brightness of the green and red dots? That tells you proximity too.
Yeah, so you have these little symbols above your reticle, and depending on which one is lit up how, it tells you things that are going on. Like one, you could be locked on by another ship. There's one that I think if it turns red, a missile is actively pursuing you. There's one for if you're being jammed, meaning you can't use your weapons. If you come up on like a large ship with a lot of amenities, they usually have a jammer that stops you from using your weaponry. So you have to be a certain distance away from them in order to fire at them. There's just like so much stuff going on. And target is not target, like Chris mentioned Afterburner, right? Like when I think of target in one of these games, I think of something where, oh, my reticle zooms over to it and it's like aim assistance. But target means eliminate the noise on my radar and show me where it is. Right? So if I target an enemy craft, the other dots on my radar get fainter and that one gets like a big yellow circle around it to tell me that that's the thing I'm after, so I can visually out of the corner of my eye monitor where it is, which was so neat.
So we're shooting lasers, right?
Lasers,
Or warheads,
but also warheads and missiles too.
Ion cannons on the Y-wing.
Yep.
Right. But I was going to ask a question out of silliness. Why do I have to lead my shots when I'm shooting lasers?
Because you're traveling faster than light speed.
Lasers.
Well, the X-wing is actually angled in such a way so that when the lasers are going, they're going to a finite point in space. So my lasers don't go forever and they hit each other.
I think one of the things this game does really well is the scale. Like I at one point knocked out the Star Destroyer's weapons, so it wasn't harming me, and then I flew down to its hull and like coasted along it, Death Star style. And I was like, man, this thing is long, but like you can keep it like beneath you for a really long time and feel like you're zooming through a trench a little bit.
And the game actually has different features depending on your PC of 1993. You could have higher or lower resolution on the big craft because the game wouldn't operate well if you had high definition but a crappy PC. My roommate had a pretty good PC, so we could turn that resolution up about 3/4, and there was some detail on that. And it's like, yeah, I want to fly along the stomach of the Star Destroyer, and you can see the turrets, as opposed to some of the lower res where it's just like, oh, there's the hot signature you got to blow up.
Yeah, we got to shoot inside the exhaust or whatever it is.
No, this game doesn't have any trench runs, so it's all freighters and fighters, Star Destroyers, frigates, corvettes.
But the ships do have anatomy, right?
Yeah, that's what the res does. So you could see better TIE fighters if your computer could handle it of the day.
But also the larger ships have things you can interact with on them, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Like what?
So on a Star Destroyer, you have the two shield pods, and those are the things you want to knock out. You learn that if you knock them out with missiles, if you target them specifically, it'll knock out the shields even faster. If you just wail away at the hull, it takes a lot more energy, but there's specific and anatomical parts on the different craft where if you can knock it out, it'll get weaker faster. A frigate, there's certain pieces to it. I forget what pieces it is. It's not the middle, but same thing. If you're playing the Empire, there are certain spots on it that are weaknesses.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising and really cool how detailed they actually were for 93. Is a lot more complex than I thought it would be, knowing that it was an early 90s
Yes.
PC game.
And my purpose of nominating this game is to let people see how good the Star Wars genre was at the beginning. They did not let out crappy games. Like, I thought all the arcade games were pretty good too, ranking them who's last, that Return of the Jedi thing with the little AT-STs and the logs. That was the lamest of the
Yeah.
games. That was like a ripoff of the Raiders of the Lost Ark game. But that green and black Star Wars game is still banging. The Pod Racer arcade game is awesome. But they've
Super Star Wars 1, 2, and 3 are all really good.
Hard,
yeah.
but really good.
I went to a Dave and Buster's and I tried to put on the VR set. I couldn't do that. My glasses wouldn't let that thing fit on my head. It was so hard to let this be on there because I can't see shit.
Gonna have to get contacts just to play.
Yeah, get contacts to just play that.
That might be a good game, but it was too much pain and suffering for me.
Life is pain and suffering, especially in that world. Nobody has it good.
Yeah, exactly. But everything they've put out in the arcades has been pretty awesome. All their PC games were pretty good. You might like one over another. Like, I thought Battlefronts 1 and 2 were spectacular. Starfighter was good. It got you the same things, but I liked this game better than Starfighter. It was a simpler version. It was, here's your 4 buttons and your flying axis. So it satisfied, but it wasn't as sophisticated and nuanced as this game with the 2 HUDs and the balancing of shields. Just thinking about real flight, real in air quotes, this gave you the feel like you had total control over what you were doing. And no 2 missions were virtually the same because your flight patterns change, your timing changes. It's a delightful game still now. I'm glad I nominated just to put myself back into it because I just had warm fuzzies from playing it early on. And then when Don and I and other nights I've just been geeking around with it, this game still holds up pretty darn well. You can't have a cheap computer to do it. Some of the audio stuff kind of clutters with it, but you can simplify it down. And John Williams' score still makes you just feel all of the right things. He is a master, whatever movie genre he's done. If you know it's a John Williams movie, the movie is already 30% better in just giving you the right feels at the right time of any movie.
I would say that cinema is definitely like a 70-30. Like, the music is very important, and like the sound is important.
And this game does not shirk on that. So yeah, there are some audio difficulties because this game was made to run on Windows 95, and there's peripheral software from Steam that gets installed on your computer, and even then I had to hit the forums to make it work properly. But once I did, like, it's got voice acting. I don't know if it had voice acting back in the day or if that's just a new version thing. Okay, yeah. So it has voice acting, but pretty good voice acting. Because when you think about voice acting in the early 90s, you know, you're thinking about like Resident Evil voice acting, which is god awful. But this is movie quality voice acting in 93, and the score is all from the movies.
Yeah.
You know, and it's fantastic 100%. And it really gets you in the mood while you're playing.
It even gives you voice commands about targets coming into play, mission objectives being completed. It is giving you intel, just like the hub is giving you intel. It's feeding you so much information at such a rapid pace. A novice game player looks at this game and probably throws it in the trash in 10 minutes because it's too complex.
Well, I got scolded like often in this game. Like, you turn it on to your first mission, and the first piece of voice acting you hear in this game is, "Don't touch anything until you're told to." Okay, all right. My
Oh, don't
controller's
touch
down,
this.
and it's like, carefully hit the target button.
The
Hit
T
the
button.
make sure you're targeting this thing. All right, now shoot it. Okay, good.
The tutorials were a little basic that back then, but since no one had a learning curve on this game before it, they had to walk you through very deeply.
Well, I disagree as someone who's not initiated into flight sims. So the base game Star Wars versus TIE is really teaching you how to play, and then it wants to send you on your merry multiplayer way with your squad of 8 boys over dial-up is what this game hopes to do. But it has 6 or 8 or so one-player tutorial missions. The first one is literally just turning and firing, getting you used to turning and firing, targeting, turning and firing. And like the next mission, they'll get you into managing some of your weapons and shields, and they just kind of build. And there's one mission where you inspect things. So like part of this world is that you're an X-wing
X-Wing.
pilot, right? And some of the things you have to do are a little bit more mundane. So like there's one where you're literally in like a interstellar traffic circle, and you have to like inspect the ships and make sure they're carrying what they're supposed to be carrying and make sure they're traveling along the flight path they say they're
You're the
traveling
Coast
on.
Guard.
Yeah, basically, right? And then when they're not, you have to blow them away. Like you found somebody where like they found
Smuggling
Imperial spies.
spice.
You're
Yeah,
transporting puppies? It says kittens. Die.
yeah, exactly. Have a warhead. You can't let them through because then your commanding officer gets on your case and they're like, "This is a fundamental skill. Mission failed. Jump back and answer to us why you messed this up." Right? You have to hang your head in shame and go back there.
And
Get
then you
yelled
just
at.
turn away and you hyperdrive in the opposite direction and said, "You got to catch me first." Getting away with this ship.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did, honestly, with the level of detail. I just wanted to get this soundbite in here because I was circling. I really like to go after the Star Destroyers, much to my detriment. I sound like a
They
hero,
are not weak.
but I lost a lot of crafts. But I was circling one, and I was trying to blow up its components and figure out where those were. So I thought, oh, I'll go get the engines, right? I circled behind the engines and I literally burned up in the engines. Like it told me that I took damage from the heat of the engines because I was too close to them. That's
I
the
made that
level of
mistake.
detail that we're dealing with here.
Yes.
So what you're supposed to do is go down far below and point straight up because you can do any orientation you want, shoot them from the bottom.
Yeah, the guns are much weaker on the. I'm hesitant to call it the bottom, but bottom, whatever the side is with not the towers. Yeah.
But behind the engines and high was the right angle to get those shield portals, the bubbles on the top.
I went directly from the top.
Yeah. Then all the turrets were able to get you on the north side of the vessel.
Did anybody kamikaze their ships?
I was just about to say that when I figured out I could switch ships and it wasn't up to me maintaining one ship, I ran out of missiles trying to blow up those towers.
There you go.
So then
No
I
more
ran
missiles?
my last ship into it and blew up the other one.
I tried many a time to get into the innards of the Star Destroyer, but their turrets blow you away pretty easily some of the time. Yeah, if you know you're going with a squadron of 8, blow your missiles early and then kamikaze. It's like a 5th missile.
It's the 4th hole.
Diatribe.
Yeah. So, this, I mean, with a straight face, I can say if you have a little bit of patience, because this is an ask to get this game up and running on modern hardware, but it is available on Steam, so half the work is kind of done for you. You do have to hit the forums a little bit, maybe do a little bit of research depending on your setup, but I think this game is well worth at least turning on and futzing around with for a few hours, because it's quite compelling right off the bat. I think where it falls short is that first experience is really just the tutorials, and then it wants you to go play multiplayer. And I will say that I went looking for how to play multiplayer with Chris, but man, you really, really have to know what you're doing to get the multiplayer working nowadays. Like, it's not
You have to
supported.
force a local area network connection over the internet.
Right. It's not easy.
It's like I did that for Mario Kart in the early 2000s where it's like bring your PC over to this person's house and you can plug it in there. I think that's the only way that kind of system worked back in 93. Steam stuff, yeah, Don and I tried to dink around on my internet and that did not work out very, very well. But I bet there's a wraparound. We just didn't invest the time to do it.
It would be so cool to get your 8 best friends together and just go, do some of these missions, like some of these runs, and be yelling at each other to bomb this or cover me here, and you get in the swarm. And I imagine there's PvP in this where you could have a squad of 8 on the other side, dog fighting with them, all doing their thing. Like it's just so neat to think about. So that was a complaint back in 93 too, apparently. So to answer that, in 1997 they launched the expansion to this game, which was Balance of Power. And one of the major things they added was a single player campaign for each side. Do you want to explain a little bit about the differences between the Rebel and the Empire crafts?
The Rebels basically fly with 4 different vessels in this game. You get to be the Z-95 Headhunter, the X-Wing, which doesn't have ion cannons, the A-Wing, which is superior speed in every way, but generally its missiles are weak, and then the Y-Wing, which has the ion cannons, which allows you to disable things. It's the bomber of the strike force. The Imperial side reverses it. It has just the TIE Fighter, the TIE Fighter Interceptor, the TIE Fighter Bomber, and then there's like some kind of assault shuttle. I don't know if it has a more specific name. I don't remember it. That basically parallels each of the Rebellion ships. And you can play good or you can play bad. The campaigns and the missions literally swap out if you're one side Imperial versus the Rebels. You get to play the game twice, just be in a different cockpit. And the cockpit orientations are definitely different. Like the Imperial ones don't have shields, except for the Imperial gunboat. It has no shields whatsoever. So when you like to kamikaze, be the Imperials. They don't take much damage very well, but they're superior in speed, superior in charging their lasers, so they can dump a ton of firepower into things.
Hey, when it's a numbers game, I mean that's the way to go.
Yeah, you just
Yeah.
deal out punishment and be faster.
And
Yeah.
in later versions, years later, you got to be Slave One. You get to be the Millennium Falcon. It gives you some other things to pilot in later versions. I don't think Balance of Power does the vessels. I think there was some additional piece to this saga later on you got to tag on.
This is actually the second game in a trilogy of these. So yeah, there is another game, and there was one before this that was just called X-Wing.
Yeah, X-Wing is what I was playing in the dorm room, and then the expansion of TIE Fighter allowed you to get to be the Imperials, and then your news of the complaints and campaigns came in, and it was just an extension of the game. Here, you must complete these tasks, but now it's in a story saga. I was fine with it in the earlier versions. I'm not complaining on the internet. I just loved the idea that I got to have John Williams and the cockpit of an X-Wing. It hit all the right buttons for me, who was still waiting for, sadly to say, Phantom Menace to come out as new content.
Yeah.
I mean, this game for what it is has a surprising depth, and I'm surprised that we're already coming up on close to an hour of talking about it. But I guess before we kind of move on to Steve and I's review of it, I'm going to ask you a question, and it's: did Han Solo shoot first?
He was the only shot in the original. There was no Greedo shot.
I guess I only saw the version with the Greedo shot.
That was the 20th anniversary brought in the Greedo shot, and that was the insult. There was only one shot, and then they put in a second shot that was so far from target, it was gross.
I just thought it was bad audio and effects for the time. I thought they were working with limited resources. So
Well,
if you
they
agree
were.
that Han Solo shot first, leave us a comment. Leave us a comment if you don't agree. That was some shameless plugging going on there. But the real question that I wanted to ask Chris is, how well do you think this game's going to do in the league?
Based on listening to all your episodes, I'm optimistic that it won't be in the bottom tier, but it ain't going to make the top tier because I think Dan, I don't think does any flight simulators, and I think your lack of flight sims just needed recognition in the league.
Your lack of flight sims
Yeah.
disturbs me.
Well, you also didn't have a Star Wars game yet, so I thought this did double dipping of a quality Star Wars game that is absolutely as retro as they come. Other than the tabletop arcade games, this might be one of the first games that would be quality for you guys. So I think it's going to be middle in it, but you two seem to enjoyed it, so maybe it should go a little higher. We'll see.
We'll have to see.
I will listen to find out, I am sure.
All right. Well, thank you for hopping on and talking to us about that.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, so this is the part of the show where we like to get our plugs in. Do you like what you hear? Of course you do. You're still listening. So go ahead and leave us a like or consider subscribing wherever you're listening to podcasts these days. They all have a subscribe feature. Get us right onto your feed. If you're listening to us, pop over to YouTube and check out the visual aspects of some of our episodes. Usually it's Dan editing. It's me this time. But I think we do a pretty good job of tying in some visual elements for folks. So to make it at least a little bit entertaining for you. Or you could consider joining our Discord. Steve, do you think Discord is our favorite fan base?
I'm sure it is. I mean, Discord has all of we have a bunch of people. All I think all of our guests are in the Discord, and then on top of that, we are fairly active. Don's the most active, and then sometimes we jump on the gaming couch and play games with people who haven't even been on the show, and it's a great time.
So if you want access to all of this, click on the Discord link below. We won't even hit you up for Patreon money yet. Enjoy. All right. So if you want to get into our review, Steve?
Yes.
So I think I said a lot of what I wanted to say with Chris, but I do want to emphasize, as in traditional cable club fashion, to talk trash when the guest turns off, when the guest signs off. That boy, was it hard to get this game running. It wasn't just like the download of all the different peripherals and getting all that stuff to work. It was like the controller mapping. Are you familiar with D input and X input? I don't even know if you had this problem, but
No, I would guess that D input is like directional pad and X input is like a joystick.
so I'm not smart enough to give you an exact definition, but what I learned is there are two different types of input for your controller. One of them is older, and you needed to, if your controller has an X input feature, because everything uses D input now, you had to use the X input feature to get the controller to register. And you can imagine already by how this conversation is going how frustrating it actually gets. But then like you go
The
in to
frustration doesn't stop there either.
yeah, so like you go in to map the controls, and if you're uninitiated like I am about flight sims, you're like, oh yeah, okay, fine, this will be like my fire button, my turn, my speed up, slow down, right? That's kind of what I was expecting. But God, are there so many commands, and they're so buried. Like you really have to look. Like
Yeah, the game is like a mountain of options, and like you ever go to a buffet and you wanted to eat like everything, but you just can't eat everything because there's too much.
saving room for that dessert pizza.
Like, except that it's not all delicious food; it's frustrating button controls.
And
Like it's like a bad Chinese buffet, but you're very hungry.
there were audio glitches where it was stuttering, and in order to fix that, you have to like go under the task manager and dedicate your processors to it, and you have to do that every time you turn the game on. It's not something that stays. I'm sure there's a way to make it stay, but by this point I was like, I just want to play the game.
Right.
And I don't want to be super negative about all of it, but it really was already with my busy life, sitting down to play a game not with a handheld is already kind of an ask these days, because I share my TV and gaming space with two other people who always want to use the TV.
Yeah, it's like when you're going to bed and it's like, hey, do you want to play? And you say, well, I have a headache. I don't feel well. I'm tired.
This is like this is hard flight sim.
Yeah, well, it's really cool in a lot of ways. It's just a shame the getting it started is so difficult, and the amount that they expect you to read and learn and memorize, the learning curve is just so steep on the initial outset that it would be difficult for new players to pick it up. I mean, even Chris said so. I think once you get past it, the systems in the game seem really cool, especially for a game from 93. And it does such a good job putting you in a position of somebody in a cockpit in space fighting against Star Wars enemies that, like, if you're a big Star Wars fan, I think it's probably worth it. Try and overcome the initial hurdle and get some gameplay in.
And I felt myself getting better. Like the game is really generous on easy mode. I don't even know if the enemy ships fire at you except for the Star Destroyers when you get too
Just moving
close.
targets.
And I think the Star Destroyers fire at you just to tell you that you're just not supposed to be doing this, right? So I switched to normal pretty fast, and then that was kind of hard because they did start shooting at me. And like there were just things that I knew I was forgetting to do. So like, when I would get in a fight and an enemy would get behind me, I'd forget to redirect my shields backwards, or I'd forget if I was trying to get away to make my lasers and shields stop charging so I could fly faster. Like, just all these little things that you have to remember to do. And I guess that's what we call playing the game in this case. It's just like, whoa, you know, in 1993, I was playing like Sonic the Hedgehog, which is a one button game,
Yeah, one button.
like just jumping. If there ever was a testament to PC superiority, especially for the time, this is it right here. We were cave people playing with our SNESs and our Genesai, and
Genesis.
they're like little sticks and stones next to these kids playing with these PCs flying actual X-wings. You know, they're all future drone pilots now.
It is very um, impressive. Very impressive.
And it was already 3D. Like we didn't get the PlayStation 1 with with 3D graphics like this, I say, because I actually think this is better than some PlayStation 1 games. Until what, 95? 95 is when the PlayStation hit the US, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so our family didn't have a computer until like 2000. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
like until all my teachers told us that everything had to be typed because they were sick of reading our crappy handwriting.
I don't need to know how to write. I'm gonna fly a fighter jet.
Yeah, our teachers were like, "We don't need you to know how to write either. We just need to be able to read the drivel you put on the page."
Yes, because the intellectual thoughts of a fifth grader is definitely on the top of your list of things to read.
But yeah, I mean, just so impressive. I think it does lack in the story department,
Yeah, I
unfortunately.
mean, any Star Wars game, other than, I don't want to generalize, but like a lot of flight sim games, really, it's not about the story, it's about the gameplay, right?
I
So,
don't think
like,
it would have taken much though. I think just even some text before you go into just to like set the mood.
instead of just having the box in the top left there telling you your objectives and having a little bit of quips of audio, and that's about it.
Yeah. This game faced criticism even at the time for being a little bit rushed. And I think it's a testament that it took them 4 years to come out with an expansion for it, which I think is a long time.
Maybe not back then, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, maybe not back then.
I mean, PC games were probably incredibly expensive to make back then.
Yeah. And at the time, I kind of wish Chris was still on to talk about this a little bit, but like Lucas was handing out, licenses left and right to people writing books about Star Wars. Like by the time 93 came out, there was an expanded Star Wars universe unbeknownst to most of us who were only familiar with the movies. But
Yeah.
there were books about every corner of the galaxy at this point. So there really was plenty of, canon sanctioned material to pull from for this game. Even non-Jedi stuff, which I feel that's what this game is. I don't think they tell you you're a Jedi in this game. I don't even think
Yeah,
they
I don't
make
think
you feel
they.
like you're Luke.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So, I feel like there could have been something in there for this to kind of bring people in. And it's unfortunate that there wasn't until much, much later.
Yeah, because a lot of that extended universe stuff is like pretty rich and well written and well thought out, and it definitely would have been nice to have a more fleshed out story. I mean, Star Wars is so deep; you could have done anything with it. So yeah, I feel you on that.
I think it's deep for the love of the fans too. Like I think a lot of the depth we associate with Star Wars, even now, because Disney took it over and then they made all the non-movie stuff not canon anymore. But my understanding is the series, the expanded universe that they've been building for the last 10 or so years has a lot of it's been based off of that fan stuff. So I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I
all
don't know.
there.
I know a lot of people are not happy with the Disney stuff, so I'm not sure how close it is or not. But
Yeah, yeah, me neither. I did read episodes 1 through 6 as books. They are rough. Like they're not
yeah,
great books. Just watch the movies. This isn't Lord of the Rings here.
yeah, the books are better than the movies, and the movies are amazing.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very high bar and it doesn't meet it.
Almost nothing does.
But this is quite the specimen, I'd say, for us. So
Yeah, it was a nice change of pace.
all right, do you want to get into rating it?
Is it fair to rate without Dan?
Oh, you stole my thunder. I was gonna play the you know what, just go ahead and play the track anyway because I like hearing that sound. So, as Steve mentioned, this is the part of the show where we would take this game, we'd put it into our patented retro game league, which is going to consist of 25 games this year. And we're going to sort them into cups, not tiers, cups. And there's going to be 5 games per cup. Once we've got all 25 locked in there, however long it takes, we are going to put them to a vote. And our audience will vote for which games they'd be most likely to play in 2025. And whichever games per cup get the most votes will earn one of our awesome prizes, either a golden cartridge or the great 2025 Retro Game League title belt. But since Dan is not here and he's a critical part of voting because he's on vacation with his family,
Ugh.
we're going to wait until our next league entry and we will enter 2 games into the league. So look forward to that argument session.
Sorry, Chris, you don't get to know.
I know he was so excited to know. Just have to bite his nails a little longer. So we're going to set Star Wars X-Wing versus TIE Fighter aside, and we're going to announce our next game for 2 weeks that we're going to rate next. The next game we're going to play is a JRPG, or maybe it's a CRPG. I get the sense it's like ancient China, not Japan. I don't know. Submitted by community member Tom, and it is a doozy of a game with over 100 companions, 108 companions to be precise, or 108 stars.
Pretty sure that's a Suikoden thing because the first game also has 108.
I think 108 stars has its place in some kind of lore. I will know by the time we film this episode. So we are going to be playing Suikoden 2 and entering that into the league. Very exciting.
Exciting indeed.
And before we sign off, I'd like to thank everybody who listens regularly. Thank you especially if you are one who likes. Thank you especially if you are one who subscribes. But thank the most especially our fans in the Discord. We love you guys. You make it all worth it because we spend the most time with you from week to week. And you give us a lot of our ideas, like answer our questions of the week and comment on the games and such like that. Makes us feel good. And our theme music is by Cubby, is Seahorse Dreams, unbeknownst. Thank you, Cubby. And we edit our own show here, both audio and video. Most of the time it's Dan, sometimes it's me, sometimes it's Steve, but we're an entirely self-produced podcast over here. 3 jokers making stuff up as we go. So thank you for hanging out with us. Game over, Steve?
Game over.